One of the most common usage of the grouping operation is not the manual grouping that we saw before, because this manual grouping can be also conducted by just creating a new column inside your table, but the most common usage is grouping of the dates. If you have a correct formatting of your dates, this means your data keeps some kind of quality of the dates, you don't have any errors, problems, and so on. You can see that Excel is treating my dates very politely and allows me to drill up and down everything I have in here in a table, and exactly the same behavior can be expected from a pivot table. So let's insert a pivot table into a new worksheet, and let's place sales and also the order date on rows. And right now the behavior of a pivot table might be different depending on your Microsoft Excel version. Starting from Excel 2016, there is also an automated grouping which causes the dates to be grouped into years, then into quarters, and then also into the months level. Right now this is what happened on my computer, but I will ungroup it to show the manual grouping also for those of you who maybe have an earlier version of Excel. You place order date on rows in Excel, for example 2010 or 2013. You right click the first element you have in here. You don't need to select all of the rows, the first one is enough. And once you hit group, you can select many of the other options that you can find in here. I will stick right now to months, quarters and years, because this is what is by default also in here. And then you will see the years, quarters and the month names. Let's right now copy the pivot table and paste it as a copy next to the old version to show that if you ungroup the dates in any of the pivot tables you have, it is still stored somehow by the pivot table memory, and it's like killing the grouping operation in all of your pivot tables. So this is of course not recommended if you have a lot of pivot tables like this. We are doing so to group it back again into days, months, quarters and years, and to see that every operation like this is not only changing all of the elements on rows, but it's also adding to the pivot table fields, but also to the pivot table cache additional columns like months, quarters and years, and also the initial order date, which refers just to the dates only. What if I don't need so rich date hierarchy on my rows? I can always get rid of quarters and, for example, order date, and concentrate only on the months level as I wish. So it's only up to you which of the choices you will make. What is more, you can always try to rename the labels you can see in here so that, for example, they stick to the nomenclature you would like to apply. Because all of the existing and the future pivot tables that you will create on your data source, which in our case is sales table, they all share exactly the same memory, or they are stored in the exactly the same pivot table cache. If you insert a new pivot table, and I will insert it into an existing worksheet just next to the previous pivot tables, then if you want to create the analysis by years, for example, and you've already grouped the data or use the auto grouping for the dates, you actually don't place order date on rows, you just look for the years column and place it with, for example, sales on values. So these fields are already in here for your analysis. They are somehow virtual columns in your data tables, but later in the next scenarios we will also discover a similar way just by creating your own columns like year, quarter, month, week number, which is missing in there. So the auto grouping of dates is quick, but it doesn't give you all of the options for the dates analysis you can find in a pivot table.